Now we get ready for one of our very highly expected panels is about careers in AI. I'm going to call upon our wonderful moderator for this, Dr. Lan Nygren, who is going to join us, and I hope she had a good time last night because it was a great outing last night. And Dr. Lan can come on and she can introduce the rest of the panels.
Thank you, Joanne. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion on building a successful career in the age of AI. I'm Dr. Lan Nygren, the Associate Dean at Brodsky College of Business at Rutgers University, and I'm honored to serve as today's moderator. And thank you, Joanne and Cheyenne SheTek, for this opportunity. AI is no longer a futuristic concept. It's reshaping industry, redefining job roles, and influencing how we work, learn, and build careers. So whether you're transitioning into the tech industry, exploring AI's impact on your field, or looking to stay ahead in an evolving job market, today's conversation will provide valuable insights and practical advice to help you navigate the AI-driven future. We are fortunate to have an incredible panel of experts joining us today. Each of them brings unique perspectives from different industries where AI is making a significant impact. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists. First, we would like to have Peter McAliney, Director of Professional and Executive Education at Rutgers University, Camden.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Peter. And we also have Drew Patel, Generative AI Solutions Manager at C3 AI.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. I'm Drew Patel.
Thank you, Drew. And Douglas Vargo, VP of Emerging Technology at CGI.
Yes, good afternoon.
And Virginia Wei, Senior Director of Marketing at MoneyLion.
Hi, guys. So nice to be here.
Thank you. Before we dive into our discussions, I would like to invite each of our panelists to introduce themselves, especially including a brief overview of their role and company they represent, or organization in Peter's case, and a highlight of their involvement with AI, and also as an optional item, a quick anecdote or key moment from your career journey into AI or technology. So I want to start with Peter.
Oh, thank you, Lan. Again, my name is Dr. Peter McAliney. I am the Director of Professional and Executive Education at Rutgers Camden. And my job is to get people jobs and have people keep their jobs and get promotions in their jobs. I'm all about jobs. Recognizing that, as Lan had mentioned, we are in an AI-driven economy. Really, it spans technical as well as non-technical jobs. Those folks who may think it's only technology will have to learn some basic understanding of the frameworks that underpin it so that they can then incorporate it into their workflows. And I know that many on the panel will agree with the statement I'm about to make, and that is that AI is not going to take your job necessarily, but somebody who knows how to use AI is somebody that probably will. The seminal part in my journey it was all the way back to 1985, when I was working with a think tank out of Stanford University, and they were talking about artificial intelligence, and it was very much machine-driven. Decision analytics was the technology that they're using, very rules-based, but I thought it was not going to be seen in my lifetime, but here we are today. Happy to be here and happy to participate. Glenn?
Thank you, Peter. Next, can we go with Drew, please?
Hi, everybody. I'm Drew Patel, Solutions Manager at C3 AI. And my current role right now is I basically help large companies identify high-value use cases in AI. This spans from traditional AI all the way into the new generative AI. And then I also lead a development team to go from POCs all the way to actually implement it into production at scale for a lot of these companies. And my background, I was originally a computer engineer. I did some AI research in my undergraduate at Lehigh University. in traditional machine learning, and then here more of a managerial role.
Thank you, Drew. Next, Doug.
Sure, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Doug Vargo. I lead a group here at CGI called the Emerging Technologies Practice. CGI is a global management consulting systems integration organization, helping organizations to adopt and scale emerging technologies. And today, we talk a ton about generative AI. And in many cases, organizations want to start at generative AI, but very quickly, we understand that they are very much immature. Starting in intelligent automation or robotic process automation, Drew just talked about use cases and the importance of use cases across the board. So is bringing the right tool to solve that use case. It's not always generative AI. But what's important, and what I've learned throughout my career, is one of the big aspects of generative AI and other technologies is data, and the importance of understanding and being literate in data and the contextualization of data around business processes in your career. As we explore today, I'm really looking forward to being part of the panel and looking across the full ecosystem of generative AI, but the technologies and techniques that support the successful rollout of generative AI and artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Doug. Virginia?
Hi guys, so nice to meet everybody. My background is in marketing. I've been in marketing for 10 years. I'm currently, like introduced, working at MoneyLion, but I've only been here actually for 2 months. MoneyLion is a fintech platform. So we do everything from making your money better, right? We're basically your one-stop shop money assistant. Prior to MoneyLion, I was at Spotify for almost 8 years, and I was working in marketing team over there as well. My background with AI would actually, I think I also tuned into some of the other conversations that I was having earlier with the other panels. And I think one of the very interesting things that got brought up is how to humanize AI, right? And I think Spotify was a place where that was very well done. So it uses a lot of AI, both in its algorithms, but also in its recommendations, machine learning bandits, all of that stuff. And I was actually on the OG team that worked on its very humanized personalized recommendation data system, which is what you guys know as the rap campaign, the year of music at the end of every year.
Thank you, Virginia. So we have a panel that represents a wealth of experiences here from different industry. We would like to start our conversation today around the current impact of AI on careers. As Peter has already mentioned that your job is not going to be replaced by AI, but may be replaced by somebody who knows how to use AI better than you. For this impact of careers, I would like the panel to share their insights. How has AI reshaped job roles and responsibilities in your field? And can you share some specific examples where AI has automated tasks, augmented tasks, etc.? I think maybe I will start with Drew. I know you have a lot of use cases.
Yeah, I can start here. Yes, I've worked with a lot of different companies, and a lot of the companies, it's very dependent on what stage they're a part of. And when we think about AI actually being implemented and how it works with the user experience, we can really start with almost the maturity of that company, right? A lot of traditional use cases, at least in the early stages, a lot of it were generative AI search applications, right? And so a lot of that is basic, hey, I'm asking ChatGPT, for instance, or something along those lines of actually retrieving data for me, retrieving information for me. And so a lot of those retrieval use cases were very early on starting, and those started the foundation blocks for more complex use cases over time, and then ultimately adjusting job roles. So in the early nascent stages, it was, hey, I'm having a support function with the AI, or I can ask, hey, I would like to retrieve this information. Then we went into the more of the analytics side, where maybe the AI is now looking at machine sensors or something like that, taking in all of these different kinds of data, and then identifying and helping the user identify what the next steps are to triage machines, basically getting manuals. And then at the last one, and I believe this is where you're pointing at, some of the very, very complex use cases, some of the more mature companies, they have done a whole end-to-end workflow. What we did one recently in the legal field for attorneys, where the AI would look at a new contract that would come in, and the AI would do a full analysis for you and then it would do a first draft for you, and then the attorneys, what their new workflow would become is it would validate that AI review process, right? So they would validate that review that the AI would have implemented, and then check off and make sure everything was going well to then go on to their clients. So that's what we've seen, at least, and it's really dependent on the company and the stages.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, we're seeing something very similar, and AI is making a big impact across roles and personas, and I'll say personas with organizations around different use cases. Peter started off by saying AI will not take your job, but someone who knows AI will. I agree with that today, but in the very near future, AI will take jobs, and I think that's important to note. And Peter actually has a great paper written by Rutgers that talks about the impact of AI on non-technical workforce and others. And a great example of this is in our what we call our system development lifecycle. If you're not familiar with an SDLC, think about the development of an application or a component or an app or anything. And as part of that, you have developers that are writing code. There are folks that are testing the code, and so on as part of that system development lifecycle. We are already seeing productivity gains of 30 to 40% of a system development lifecycle or a developer and others being more having better productivity because of generative AI, being able to ask the engines to create code. We will start to see the elimination of type of roles like developers and others because the generative AI tools will be able to take that on. That is just part of digital transformation. We have to embrace digital transformation. And I know it might be a bad example, but I think it actually applies. When you look at EasyPass, when you drive through EasyPass, we never have to stop anymore. There used to be jobs there around EasyPass and at the toll booths. They're no longer toll booth operators. Digital transformation took on those jobs. We're going to see the nature of digital transformation and AI, and specifically generative AI, start to impact the workforce. But we need to embrace that.
Yes, great. Go ahead.
I know I already spoke, but I want to also, Doug, I want to add on to this. It's also very dependent on the industry. I know it's a panel, so we're being very, generic. But a lot of the industries that we're seeing are getting, very much transformed by generative AI and AI in general. It's really going down, and I read a BCG report pretty recently, I think it came out in either October or November, but they actually did a breakdown of some of the industries. So software, as you mentioned, right? Generative AI can implement, instantly right now, affect those core business processes, right? So software, media, fintech, insurance, we see a lot of that already. Some of the harder industries and you can see it as more of physical in a sense, machines and automation, the generative AI does a bit more of a support function, for instance, right? A support role. Or maybe powers and utilities and renewables, that's a little bit more of a support role. And that might take a little bit longer for the digital transformation to kick in. But obviously, Doug, you're definitely spot on. Especially when we look at an industry by industry level framework, we see that the AI is taking over a lot of the core business processes today.
Okay, so I think our audience may be wondering, there may be some software engineers in the audience, and they may be wondering, okay, eventually they don't need a lot of people to write codes anymore. I would like panel to share their insights on the skill development in the era of generative AI. What technical and human skills are critical for thriving in the AI-driven workforce? And how can individuals effectively upskill or reskill to stay competitive in the evolving landscape?
I'll jump in on this one, and I'm going to stick to the human skills because I think at least two of the panelists here know a lot more about the technical side than I do. Drew and Doug, that would be, I'm not sure about you, Virginia. But really, the development of the human skills is essential to living in this coexistence with AI. We're looking at skills like the emotional side. AI is not yet and may never get to be to the point of understanding what human emotions are involved in decision-making and in working together and collaborating. So things like persuasion, self-awareness, ethics, these are things that you'd want to make sure that in your education that you're thinking about developing and enhancing. Another one is complexity. navigating ambiguous and broad contexts that kind of fall within a holistic problem-solving environment. Again, this is something that AI has not yet gotten there, may never get there, but this is very much of a human kind of a skill. Another one is physicality. Certainly, you look at different things like dexterity and body language and body strength. Jobs and occupations that are reliant upon those are less likely to be overtaken by AI in certainly the near term, if not the long term. And then lastly, creativity. There are certain cultures are much more creative than others. And certainly humans can be much more creative than a machine that is really, when you think about what technology is, at the end of the day, for anybody who's old enough to remember this, it just boils down to zeros and ones. It's all binary. And creativity is not binary. Creativity is multidimensional, and it's something that really, synthesizing from numerous perspectives that may or may not seem like they're apparent to the individual problem or task at hand. But that's where a human would say, hey, look, I see that over there, and I think it's got some relevance. Whereas an AI model, if it's not trained in that particular area, isn't going to be able to introduce it into the task of the process. So I'd say they're human skills. We used to call them soft skills. We all know soft skills are not soft. They're very difficult. But those are skills that you really want to make sure that you pick one or two of them and dive deep on it and understand what the intersection of those skills are with the technology. So I'm going to turn it over to the technology folks now to address the other side of the equation.
Yep, go ahead, Virginia.
No, it's totally fine. No, I just wanted to add on to this. I think marketing is one of those things that is more on the creative side and more on the human side of the leverage of AI tools, right? And I think I completely agree here. A couple points, right? Like I always say, we are marketing towards other humans in the end. We're not marketing towards machines. You're talking to another human being. Yes, AI is very useful in synthesizing large quantities of data and allowing us for really specific and targeted personalization. But when it comes down to it, the emotion, the creativity, all of that is very important. And when you think about it, AI really it's based on historical data, right? So it cannot account for any innovations or things that have not happened in the past because it is not a predictive model in that sense. It can't predict things that have no historical context for its data to feed into, right? On the other hand, also, I think what is very important is, especially for the more creative sides of the workforce, like marketing, what is more important in terms of a skill set that to develop is really your comfort level and ability to leverage data and use data and pivot data that AI spits out for you, right? Marketing as a platform, when people think about it, a lot of times they think about the ad campaigns and Super Bowl ads and stuff like that, very creative things, but it is becoming much more data-driven, much more like technical in its skill set because of the introduction of things like AI, right? When we have so many data points, you need to be able to pivot all of the data that AI spits out for you. You need to be able to understand it, and you need to be able to leverage it for all the strategy that you're setting.
Great point, Virginia. Doug, you have mentioned the data skills, and you mentioned how to interpret data, right? That's also a very important skill that I think the human needs to take on. So
yeah,
I would like to
absolutely. And there's the adage that data is the new oil in many ways. And these large language models are driven by good quality data. And in some cases, it doesn't have to be as good quality because the AI can help you make it into good data. We're helping organizations with synthetic data generation, so leveraging the generative AI tools to help us create production-like data so we can have better test scenarios for our applications. And I'm sure Spotify did something very similar by making sure that we have all that data created so they can test the solutions in different aspects to prove that it's going to be personalized, but meet those overall scenarios. So those skill sets are so important, as Peter talked around, the soft skills that transcend into the data skills. Understanding business processes. How does that happen? That's through better listening. better understanding of business processes, persona definition, understanding who you're talking to, what they care about the most. And that will translate into better prompt engineering, which we haven't talked about yet, but that communication, those skills to be able to create the best prompts to communicate with these models. So understanding the data and being able to communicate with the models are those soft skills that'll have to come aboard. You don't have to be a SQL a developer or to be able to understand data sets or data lineage and all those. The models are going to do that for you. But knowing how to communicate with these large language models and communicate with the system, that's going to be the key moving forward.
Thank you. Great discussions. I'm looking at the time, so we have a lot to cover. I would like to move on to the next theme. That is the advice for the emerging professionals. So for the audience who are new to the tech industry or new to AI, what mindset, habits, or actionable steps can professionals adopt to transition into the AI field? And what resources, such as books, courses, or certification, would you recommend for staying ahead in the AI era?
So I'll begin this one since it's in my wheelhouse. So what you want to be thinking about doing is putting together a very deliberate program. First thing you want to do is go out there and try to find resources from credible sources that talk about what AI is, how it's impacting jobs, some of the very, very basic underlying technology. It's certainly not a deep dive, but just have an understanding of how it works. And that could set up the kind of the groundwork, if you will, for what you want to do. And then what you want to do is you want to understand for your career that you've chosen, what is the current impact and what is the future impact of AI on your career. And you look at both your job role and your industry, because if you draw a matrix of job roles and industries, that's going to look a little different. You want to do that for where you are today, but most importantly, you want to do it for where you're going to be this time next year and 5 years down the line. The second thing that you want to do is, first of all, you might at this point feel like you're being overwhelmed. So I'm going to say stay in a whelmed state and not an overwhelmed state, and you'll be just fine. See what it is, and then put together a game plan. Contextualize the game plan as to what you can do as it relates to what you're doing in your job now, and what sort of time you will need to make a commitment to invest in your own career. It's really the unit that I'm at here at Rutgers Camden. We are the lifelong learning, or we used to be called the lifelong learning unit, but it's all about lifelong learning now. Technology's changed, the ground for the competitive environment changes. There are political forces, there are environmental, sustainability. There are a number of different forces that act upon who you are, where you want to go in your industry. And lifelong learning is now something it's not optional, it's very much, it's imperative. Once you've put your plan together, then you want to start working your plan. And depending on what kind of a learner you are and where you're coming from and what your background is, you've got a couple of choices you could make. If you are a self-learner and you have a technology background and you want to learn more about it, then there are lots of self-directed, self-paced programs out there that are inexpensive or in some cases free from some of our major providers such as Amazon, Google, Microsoft, IBM, that you can do this on your time because you'll be able to contextualize it and integrate it into your future. If, however, you're coming from outside the technology, then I would recommend that you would take courses from established institutions, such as we have worked here at Rutgers with SheTek. We put together a very successful AI boot camp, and I know Doug was part of it as well. I'm not sure if Virginia and Drew, you were part of it in other manifestations. But look to a program that's going to meet you where you're starting. And there are lots of programs out there. Find one that hits where you're starting from and sign up and take it and invest the time. Some folks are going to say, gee, I've gotten enough, I've taken it this far, I've gotten enough out of it, I can apply it to my job. Other folks may say, this is really fascinating. I want to learn more about the technology side. I'm going to get the technology side of it that you may not even known about before. So first of all, your step one is you develop the impact on your career. Step 2 is don't get overwhelmed, contextualize your plan, and then 3, start working your plan.
Yeah, and I'd
That's very
also
comprehensive.
say just get started. There's no excuses. There really isn't. If you have a laptop, you have an iPhone or any Android, whatever phone, you have access to AI. You have access to generative AI. And many times you've already been using it. If you use Waze, you're using AI. But in this case, we're talking about generative AI. Use the tools. Go to Copilot, Gemini, Perplexity, you name it. Go use it. Force yourself to use it in one scenario a day. Write an email, summarize a document, give me key points, highlight today's happenings in the news, whatever that is. Ask questions. Not everyone was great at Google searching at one point. Now it is just part of what everyday life. Get started. And then there are plenty of free sources out there. Peter named a few great ones with the hyperscalers. It doesn't matter if you're going with AWS, Microsoft, Google. They have free courses. Go take them. OpenAI, they're free. Go take them. YouTube is a great place for short, digestible components of how to get started. That's my recommendation, is just get started.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, like a few things here. One is if you're looking for a job specifically in AI, I think maybe Drew, Peter can help out you more, but rather I'm talking more like if you're looking for a job that leverages AI, that uses AI in its function rather than being in the technical aspect of AI itself. I think talk to people, find out there's so many different platforms and companies that use AI and leverage AI nowadays that it's important to understand what is the best in class for your specific function, for your specific industry, figure out how it's being used currently, and then it's more useful, honestly, sometimes to know how to use these specific platforms than to understand AI as a concept, right? Because that's constantly changing, and the landscape moves so fast that it's not as useful for you to know more about AI. I want to know more, especially if you're starting out in your career, how you can leverage it in actual execution. The other thing is, somebody who very recently went through recruiting and also somebody who's currently hiring, I've seen so many bad uses of AI because you could tell that a candidate just put something into ChatGPT and then took everything from it and then copy paste it and sent it over. Please don't do that. If you're going to, it's basically plagiarizing work. If you're going to plagiarize a paper, at least edit it yourself, right? If I put the same question and get 80% of your answer from ChatGPT, then why do I need you, right? As a manager, like, why would I hire you when I can just pay for a ChatGPT subscription? Put some thought into your processes. Things like ChatGPT obviously can really up-level the amount of information and background research and all of these things you can do, but the solution is not something I want that ChatGPT can give me. If I wanted that, I would just use ChatGPT. I want innovative solutions from people that we are hiring. So take the data and make your own opinions. Don't take the opinions from AI and just copy and paste that.
Yeah, that's a pitfall in jobs seeking process. We have heard from our employers similar feedbacks of some our graduates are. Yeah, that's definitely a problem that our employees, when you're looking for jobs, job seekers need to be careful about. Thank you for mentioning that, Virginia. Okay, so if we can move on to our some industry-specific insights, because I think to this point, a lot of tools and resources really are depending on what industry you're working on, what kind of jobs you are looking for. So we have deep representations from different industry, of course. So could our panelists share some of their insights of how is AI uniquely impacting your industry, and what challenges and opportunities do you foresee, and what AI tools or platforms are making the most impact in your field that you would like our audience to pay specific attention to?
All right. Don't want to hear any dead space, so I'll jump in here. Obviously, and I did catch the tail end of the prior conversation, higher education. What's it doing to higher education? Virginia, you mentioned people just lifting and, as we used to call it in the old days, plagiarizing from previously written stuff. Yeah, when it first came out, there were two schools of thought. One is, don't let students use, generative AI. It's cheating. However, thankfully, in a very short period of time, we've dispelled that. What we now say is ChatGPT is a wonderful way to take your thinking to the next level and think about it as an iterative approach. And what's doing is we talk about, and we probably all heard about the skills gap and the gap between the folks who are underemployed and jobs that are there. What ChatGPT and generative AI in general, I don't want to call out one particular product, but what generative AI can do is going to help you iterate your thinking such that you can take it to the next level. And what it also does is it brings together more closely the workplace and the higher education experience that individuals are having. And again, I talk about lifelong learning. In the old days, you got a bachelor's degree, you got a master's degree. If you stayed in academia, you got a PhD. But really now, we think about learning in terms of learning bursts. Learning bursts are much smaller. Doug had alluded to YouTube. So I have friends who jokingly call it YouTube University. I know I had a problem with the car the other day, and I went to YouTube and I found out how to fix it. It was great. And it wasn't a major fix, mind you, but still, it was something that I wouldn't have been able to do a number of years ago. So what it does is in higher education, it's bringing the educational experience closer together to the workplace. There are much more opportunities for experiential learning. This goes back to what I was talking about before in terms of the skills that I had indicated you might want to focus upon as we move into an AI-driven world. But what we want to be able to do is use it to leverage and build your knowledge and think about building both deep, in particular a field you might be in, but also it allows you to go wide. In today's jobs, there are very few jobs that are so narrowly focused that you don't need to know what's going on with all the tangential individuals you will need to communicate and collaborate with. And I had a conversation with a company yesterday where it was a public relations firm, and what we decided we were going to do is we were going to have two segments. One is, here are the public relations professionals. Here are 6 or 7 of the major tasks or activities they do. We said, let's talk about how AI can support those different tasks. And then the second half of it is breakout groups where we have this group does life sciences, this group works with manufacturing, this group works with agriculture, pick it, call it what you will. And that is, how do people in manufacturing use AI? It pays to know that. How do people in pharmaceuticals, life sciences, how do they use AI? So it's not just your role, but also the people who you come in contact with and interact with in your normal course of business. Drew, I don't think you went to law school, but you're working in a law firm now, and you need to get brought up to speed on what processes are involved in the law practice. So it allows you to do that very quickly.
Yeah, Doug, you want to share, because in your management consulting experience, you mentioned that could be some challenges about change management. I was
absolutely. And as part of management consulting and IT consulting, I have the opportunity to look globally, to look across all industries and understand where organizations are today from a maturity perspective on adopting generative AI. And some are very early on in that exploration. Some are already at production and scale, and everyone else is in between. And so with CGI, we have a whole methodology we call AI Launchpad. It helps organizations understand what is the vision of the organization and what are the bottoms-up business processes that the organization depends on. And if you can meet in the middle, that's where your gold is. That's where your use case is that you are going to evaluate. And then we look at each business process. You look at the business flow. You look at fingers on keyboards, the data flow, all of those pieces. That's what comes up to be a specific use case. And then you can evaluate your IT priorities. We find in organizations, you have people that either went and generated hundreds of great ideas, or they went and built the best of breed IT. But it's hard for them to meet in the middle. And you just mentioned a really key part. When you try to adopt and scale generative AI, change management or organizational change management is a pivotal topic. And we're starting to see that we are building solutions and we're not seeing the adoption. And there's many ways, or we're providing the necessary tools and there's not an adoption of those tools. There's a psychological component around the adoption of AI and generative AI in an organization. There is a reason why people resist. And so we need to combat that resistance with psychological techniques. So I believe a career of the future for any of those psychology majors that are on the line, that if you are a psychology major, start to think about how can I apply traditional psychological techniques and then put a skin of AI reasoning on top of that to combat that resistance. Because we need to be able to personalize, relate, and get people to leverage these technologies, because that's the wave of the future. That's where the productivity gains, as well as the upskilling of yourself to be able to drive your career in the future.
Yes. So
yeah,
go ahead, Joe.
No, so I'd like to add on to this too, because especially so I'm more on the implementation side, right? Especially when we look at, when I actually talk to a lot of these like very large companies, the data is very interesting. I believe that it is majority of the companies, I think 98% of companies are already utilizing AI in some kind of way, but only a quarter of them have actually gone past a POC phase, actually into production. And then after that, only 4% of them have actually provided substantial value, right? So that is a key thing, and it's especially dependent on obviously the industry that you're looking into. But one thing to note is obviously the people management that Doug, you were discussing, is actually one of the main reasons why that adoption isn't going through, right? For instance, maybe the POC, it could be difficult to actually identify the value of this case, right? But there's also too, and obviously the people is a larger important piece, but when you think about actually scaling it across an organization, and we can go back to some of the technical fields and requirements, there's obviously a need for infrastructure on the base layer, right? So you need to actually have the infrastructure, the technical skills for the infrastructure. We take a POC into production, right? There's also data integration requirements, right? What are the data that's required for it? There's also machine learning that needs to be implemented in some kind of way. And then also, how are the end users are actually going to use it, right? This goes back to the adoption. Do we need to make a custom UI for it? Do we need to do this? Do we need to do that? And so when we see, at least across industries, like, yes, there's some use cases that are very good, or it could be a high value use case, but it could be in effect based off of user adoption, for instance. And we've seen a lot of that reflected in the data as well, where a lot of these POCs are either going live and they're not producing any value. That could be an issue from identifying actually what are the high value use cases, or tracking and making sure that we're getting an ROI or investment. Or it could be as simple as just a change management that's actually not getting implemented. That's why I know it's a very nuanced question. I know we don't have a lot of time, but obviously I'm trying to condense everything as much as possible. And I think Doug did a great job too, but just to add on to it.
Thank you. Great. Yeah, we are a little short of time, so I would like to get to some of the future-looking themes. Doug mentioned the business processes. Understanding that processes is going to be even more important, given that a lot of technical side could be handled by the generative AI. So the experiences, business experiences, is going to be even more relevant in the future. So I would like the panelists to reflect on how can human intuitions and decision-making remain relevant in the increasing AI-driven landscape. When I ask some of our advisory council members, if you have two job candidates, one has more experience but knows less of AI, the other knows more AI with less experience, which one you would hire? So I got mixed answers. Some executive says, I will prefer somebody who knows more AI, and some says, I would prefer somebody who has more experiences. So I'm just curious of our panelists, what your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll start and say, I think it depends on the role, right? Not every role is the same. If you're a life-saving practitioner, like a doctor or a surgeon, you're already leveraging AI in a lot of what you're doing from a surgery perspective, but you still need the techniques and the knowledge. AI will positively benefit you, but you're still going to have to execute your role across the board. So not every role would be the same. However, I think we'll start to see a transition of that answer, where today it's probably, I want people to know the business and I want to know the data and then AI. And over time, that might flip a little bit, where yes, I need this, but AI is going to be so valuable from a skill set perspective.
I think actually I want to slightly challenge you on that, Doug. And I want to hear your opinion on this. One of the things that we have seen we've been implementing, and I know you do implementations as well. Obviously, the AI skills are really important, right? And so that is obviously the implementation. But when the AI infrastructure is in place, maybe we have some use cases. I've actually seen, and this is obviously because this is the limited information of the companies that have actually implemented AI at this kind of scale. I've seen a lot of almost like a support governance piece as well. So people who really understand the use case, really understand the industry, they need to have really in-depth knowledge to just validate and make sure that the AI is on track. But I actually do understand what you're saying. I think it's very nuanced of the actual role it is.
I completely agree. I think it is very much dependent on role. I think that one of the things that I'm a big believer of is that, yes, data is important and data is very helpful, but data is not everything. Sometimes, especially as a marketer, data takes time, right? Especially if you're testing something that's more long-term, it takes time and it takes volume. Sometimes you just don't have the time and volume. If you want to launch something in the market, if you don't have the money or the budget, the time, the people to do user research on, how do you know if this is going to work? Experience. This is something that you've seen before. This is something you've done before. It's a completely experience. Also, on a more creative side, I know people are starting to use AI for like creative development, copy assets, like images, design, and stuff like that. But I think that's like a huge separate conversation about copyright issues and like artistic development, but these are things that we see. It's much better to still have somebody with a lot of experience and a lot of a breadth of work rather than depth of work, because when it comes to AI, a lot of time it's depth of work that it is very good at.
Yeah, and just to weigh in on the subject, and I think I would tend to agree with Doug on this, and that is it's going to change over time. It's going to be different as it relates to how far along you are in your career. We think about career trajectories. Certainly, AI helps you to do your quote-unquote homework much more quickly, but can you synthesize the information you're getting out? And as Virginia had mentioned earlier, you really have to look at it. You got to put the human patina on it such that you make sure that it makes sense. And that takes the human side of it. As the models get trained in more depth and there's more assurances that the information coming out of the models aren't what they call hallucinations. That's something you've got to watch out for with AI. Then you'll see it becoming less on the human, but it'll allow individuals to climb the learning curve much more quickly. I used the example about fixing the car the other day. I wouldn't have tried that 5 years ago. But I know I could go to YouTube University and, in essence, a rudimentary form of AI.
Before we're wrapping up, we do have some questions from the audience. So one is related to how to get into the AI field and quickly get up to speed with the industry. Any recommendations for beginners? And somebody also mentioned how can technology assist in the development of soft skills? So we at Rider University, our career services, we have a career planning class in our business curriculum, and our faculty are utilizing the virtual reality to help students prepare for the job interviews and really get ready for the job search. So that's something we didn't get a chance to touch on. So we talk about, Virginia touched on some of the pitfalls, but I also understand in today's job market, it's very competitive. A recent Wall Street Journal article mentioned MBAs from the Ivy League schools have hard time finding jobs. And I just realized how many jobs they have to apply these days. It's shocking. One University of Michigan MBA student submitted job application for 500 jobs and still didn't get anything. Another Stanford MBA applied for 1,000 jobs and didn't get anything. So I think this job search process to help candidates to be competitive, the tools of AI is going to play some role here. Of course, at the end, the Stanford person got the job through an alumni connection. So it's really human skills. You have to, sometimes who you know is more important than what you know. So it's all connected to our discussions today. So any thoughts on that?
I'll start with old school networking is still king, right? So being able to network and develop your professional community, that by every means is the best way to find a new career path or at least explore. So always continue with your networking. That's a big piece of it. But I'll come back specifically to your question of how to get started. Is what I said earlier, is get started. Go into one of these engines, download the app, whatever you need to do. Get started by leveraging these tools and technologies as part of your everyday life. Here's my call to action for everyone. Take your resume, take your LinkedIn profile, and load it up into a Copilot or whatever generative AI, and ask, and through a prompt, let them know what you want to do, what type of role you're looking for, and ask it to critique and provide recommendations on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile. How do I better prepare myself for? What are the questions someone's going to ask me? You can get ready for a job interview right through generative AI. It was going to coach you. It's going to provide recommendations on your profile, on your resume, on your LinkedIn, all of those things. Your social profile is still so very important. So you can leverage the tools to make you look better, but also prepare yourself for the future job workforce.
I completely agree. I recruited myself for 6 months in 2024. I was looking for a new job, right? And first and foremost, networking is king. If it's a referral, especially for a larger company, it's very important, right? Like at a place like Spotify, if you had a referral, I 100% at least looked at your resume. If you did not come in with a referral, the chances that I looked at your resume is much lower. Also for these big companies, a lot of times they're using AI to filter out your resumes. You have specific keywords, you immediately get selected for a human review. If you're missing specific keywords, you sometimes just get auto-rejected. That's why you get the rejection letter in a minute or 30 seconds or whatever like that. I think you got to treat your recruiting almost like a user research. For instance, in the beginning, I was throwing out resumes, like you said, Lan, like applying to all these jobs. Then I see, okay, which jobs are actually getting back to me? So I know what is working on my resume. Are these the jobs that I actually want to apply for? And if they're not, then how do I change my resume to then to get information back from jobs that I want, right? Or if these jobs are the ones that I'm applying for, then I got to update and amplify the part. So in the beginning, yes, I wasn't hearing back from companies. I wasn't like getting interviews. But at the end of my recruiting season, if I threw out a resume, and obviously because I'm this type of person, I keep a spreadsheet of jobs I applied to, when I heard back. At MoneyLion, for instance, I threw out my resume and I heard back, got an interview and started interviewing within a week, right? So then that was at the end of my recruiting timeline. And because I've optimized my entire resume and application process with AI to make this super, super efficient. You got to treat this as like you are the project and you got to optimize yourself, right?
And yesterday at the reception, I heard one job candidate is telling me how the company who she applied for asked her to respond to the kind of agent AI. So she felt like very uncomfortable with that mechanism. So it's like, how can we help students get used to this AI-assisted job search process? Really interesting.
Yeah, it's really contingent. In our career office here at Rutgers in Camden, we're faced with the same issues. First interviews, so you're lucky enough, as Virginia said, you used the right keywords, you got through the AI robot that scanned for the keywords it was looking for. And then the next thing, we're all looking at a camera now, but you're given 5 questions, and they give you a minute to compose your answer, and then you have to hit enter and answer the question. It can be a little off-putting. Again, Doug, your point about networking, I was at the event last night. I had a couple of my students who work with me, and they just looked very uncomfortable. And I just kept pushing them. And I can remember when I was that age, it's not the most comfortable thing. And I think it's even tougher on the young people today because of all their experience between the pandemic and the lack of really going out and, for lack of a better word, going out to the club scene or the bars or wherever it was you used to go out with and talk to people. They just don't have that experience. So for networking in humans, and what I told my two students last night, I said, go introduce yourself to that person so that when they receive your resume in the stack, they'll have a face to put to that resume because they knew who you were. And you may, even if you just say hello and you got your name, I'm going to follow up with you, that makes an impression. And it's all about getting to the top of the stack of the resumes.
So true. I think to add to how to get started, I think one thing I would like to mention is to look for some kind of community like that can provide this kind of network and resources to help you get started. Yesterday's reception really impressed me in the sense of the community that is where SheTek is building, and the people who are involved, they are so dedicated to helping young people succeed in this field. So I think to be a member of SheTek might be a right step to start.
Lan,
okay.
Thank you. Lan, thank you for that. I'm chiming in. This is Chaya. I really appreciate you bringing it up because the way we actually plan these sessions is also in a sequential manner, right? One session kind of segues into the next session. I think this is a great conversation. I really thank everyone. And Lan, thank you for bringing up yesterday's networking event. Yes, that kind of community is so essential. And thanks for sponsoring the venue for us. But I really feel that the online community that we have created in SheTek actually is full of resources. We have recording of every session that happens through SheTek, and it's full of resources. In addition to that, we also have, somebody brought up the soft skills question, right? So we do have a bunch of soft skills that are already created in the SheTek resources. So everyone is encouraged to go ahead and take advantage of those resources.
Yes, thank you, Chaya. I think this kind of community building is really very important, especially in the AI era. So I really appreciate your leadership and vision for this type of organization, building this organization. We are close to the time, so I think we would like to have each of our panelists just to share some closing thoughts with our audience. If there is one thing you would like our audience to take away from this discussion, what would that be? Or any other things you want to mention that you haven't got a chance to share with our audience?
Try it, you'll like it.
Yes, and get started. I've said it a couple of times. Get started. Start to force yourself to leverage these technologies. That's how you'll learn. It is like riding a bike, the old adage way back when. It's like Google searching. It is an art. It's not a science. So start to leverage the tools and technologies. I'll come back to my call to action. Start with your resume and utilize prompt engineering, and you can go to YouTube to help you figure that out.
I think just having a growth mindset and remembering that the tech industry is an industry that moves in the speed of light, right? AI is a topic today. 5 years ago, it was something completely different. We're always going to have new disruptors. We're always going to have new things in addition. You have to be an expert in AI for the next decade. I don't know what, and in 2030, I don't know what the next thing is. Get used to learning. And also mini plug, because I am currently hiring for 3 roles under me on different levels, all in marketing. So if you're very interested, please come take a look, because I would love more people to come work for me.
And then for me, just keep learning. And I think, Virginia, you said you want the project optimize yourself. I think that was you. So great words as well. Yeah, keep improving yourself and be better every day.
Yeah, thank you, Virginia, for saying the growth mindset. I think regardless of our competencies in AI, we can all learn and grow and develop our competencies. And to Doug's point, just get started. Just download the ChatGPT if you haven't used it, or Copilot, and just start using it. Okay? Thank you so much for all our panelists for your time. And thank you, SheTek, Joanne, Shaya, for the opportunity. And thank you so much to our audience for spending time with us.